Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jonty Pearce. I'm editor of Call Center Helper, and I'm joined today with Mike Murphy from Interactive Intelligence. We've got a great webinar planned for today, a little bit of an experiment for us. It's called 30 Contact Center Tips. And is 30 Contact Center Tips. I'm going to be starting off by giving 10 contact center management tips. Mike Murphy from Interactive Intelligence will be then going through 10 contact center technology tips. And just when you thought you could sit back and relax and enjoy the hour, the next 10 tips are going to be sent in by you, our audience. So if you've got any tips, we'd certainly like to see them. And I think that'll be some great knowledge sharing. A little bit of an experiment with us. We've had a couple sent in by email already ahead of the conference. And we hope to see some going through there. And again, as an added incentive, there's a bottle of champagne. We've got interactive questions and answers then from the audience. But before we get going, what I'd like to do is I'd like to put up a poll. And the first poll is, how large is your contact center? So if you'd like to vote on that, the answers are 1 to 49 agents, 50 to 99 agents, 100 to 199 agents, 200 to 399 agents, and 400 agents plus. There the results up on the screen. So by and large, yeah, 1 to 50 agents is 36% of the audience. Got quite a number, 100 plus 30%. So about half the audience there, if I can add up properly, is over 100 agents. So yeah, quite a wide range of people overall. So what I'd like to start off by doing now, just hide those results there, is I'd like to start to take you through 10 contact center management tips. Again, you can put comments in the question box, and we can discuss those as we go through if you disagree with anything we've said. What I'd like to start off by looking at is customer loyalty. And it seems to me that customer loyalty seems to be driven by 4 main factors. We've been doing quite a bit of work on this recently, but it seems that it's driven by a combination of employee loyalty, customer effort, price, and brand, or the coolness of the brand. Apple, for instance, has got a very loyal brand. But within customer service, there's probably only a certain number of those that we can deal with, and it's probably employee loyalty and customer effort. Things like price and brand tend to be more within the domains of marketing. So if I look at something like employee loyalty, that's really about getting employees on side. And my first tip is quite a straightforward one, is that happy employees equal happy customers. And I think we'd all agree with that. But one of the problems I think I see a lot in contact centers is we probably haven't got the agent engagement where we need to. Just did a quick little survey a little while ago, just looked at 3 days comments on call centers on Twitter, and we got some answers on employee engagement coming back. And you know, it's just an awful lot of sentiment that was like this. You know, it's only call center work, it's rubbish, I hate it, but I'm traveling. And then you get some quite witty ones. The awkward moment, says Jeff, when you work in a call center and decide to plan your escape. And I think the one that, to my mind on there, that is probably the most telling is, I used to work at the Orange call center. I seem to remember I didn't quit. I just stopped going. So I think my first tip is we've all got a job to do in terms of getting agent engagement on side, and that can probably have the biggest single impact, I think, on customer loyalty. How do we do that? Well, one thing I've seen works very well is providing feedback, a thank you to our frontline staff. And probably one of the simplest ways of doing that is to have a reward board. We quite often get sent in emails and letters from our customers. Quite often they'll phone us and tell them of something well done. It's just to write it out or paste that onto a board that is very visible, and to share that with people. Costs next to nothing and works extremely well. The other thing is we often do a lot of quality monitoring. We listen to an awful lot of calls, and is really to try and share examples of excellent calls. There's a technique on this one called champagne moments, which is where you celebrate excellent calls with prizes. It works well in two ways. It works in terms of giving recognition to the individual, but it also works very well in terms of providing guidance, particularly to new people within the company, of what good looks like, and that can be quite useful on that. Some other things that can help with agent engagement. Something I've seen that's been very, very well received is something called flexible shifts. Now, within call centers, we have all sorts of different shift patterns, but they're often sort of set for historical reasons, or because we have unions, or just that's the way that we've always done it. This is where you go to agents and say, you know, what would your ideal shift pattern be? It doesn't have to be an 8-hour day. What would you prefer to work? So you find that for some people, for instance, like to, you know, have difficulty getting up in the morning. A lot of youngsters, you know, like to go out party. So for them, an ideal shift might be starting at 12 and working through till 7:30, or even perhaps later. For someone with young children, the ideal shift might actually be a 9:30 till 2:30, so they can have children at school or at nursery. So quite a simple way. You've got to have some rules. For instance, you know, quite typically I've seen you have to have one antisocial shift per month, perhaps a Friday or Saturday evening, which always tend to be quite difficult to do, or filling bank holidays. And then, you know, perhaps you have to keep that shift pattern for 12 months. And then it's really to recruit to fit in with those within those gaps. So that can work very well. There's an article on the website for a link to there, and that will be in the copy of the slides, which will be available on the website later on today. So that's some things on employee engagement. I think the other part of it is the customer effort piece, which is making it easy to deal with within the contact center. And there's a number of areas here. My next tip is really around eliminating those, what I call oh no moments. You get them when you listen to calls and you think, I cannot believe that we as a company did that to our customer. And there's really two pieces from this. There's that we did that, which means that we've got broken processes in the rest of the organization. And there's also, I don't believe that we said that to the customer, which is down to a training issue. So I think those are an area I think is well worth going off and examining what is behind those oh no moments. I think in terms of things like customer effort, we see that content center measurement is changing. We've got certainly some very good contact center metrics that we use in terms of durations of calls and volumes of calls. What I'm starting to see is a new breed of metrics coming through that are to deal with outcome, or trying to look at customer loyalty. The first one, which is probably reasonably widespread, though I meet quite a number of people who don't use this, is something called the NetPromoter Score, which is basically a scale of how likely is it you'd recommend our company to a friend or colleague. And then people score the results out of 10. And if they score 7 or more out of 10, they're viewed as a promoter. And if they score less than 6, they're viewed as the detractor. And you look at the ratio of the two. And I've seen instances, for instance, this was taken from British Gas in Cardiff, where they put their Net Promoter Score up on their wallboard so that everyone can see it's quite visible. There have been claims that this is the only metric that you need within the contact center, and I've certainly seen some people who do that, and there's a big trend towards having just one single metric. A very interesting one that came up about 18 months ago is something called the Customer Effort Score, and it's basically, you ask the question, how much effort did you have to put in to deal with your request today, and you measure that on a scale from 1 to 5, and this is claimed to be the most effective predictor of increased spending or repurchase. I certainly feel myself that customer effort seems right. If we put our customers through lots of hurdles, for instance, a long queue on an IVR, or we keep asking them for their account numbers, that's going to make them less loyal. But is that the only factor? I personally have my doubts. And is this the only factor we need to measure? Well, I think really, I asked the question, is there really a silver bullet to contact center management? And in fact, if you've read the newsletter, Call Center Help newsletter this week, we've got an article debunking the customer effort score myth. And I won't spoil your thunder on there, but certainly the customer effort score is a very good measurement. But I think in my view, it is not the only measurement you could look at. So we've done a little bit looking at measurements there. What I'd like to do now is a poll, whereas I'd like to ask the audience, what metrics do you use in your contact center? This is multiple answers that you can put on here. The answers are number of calls, average handling time, first call resolution, QA scores, or NetPromoter or customer effort score. So if you'd like to put your votes in there, you can vote for more than one, just to apply all the ones that you think are used within your contact center. So we've got most people voted. We're still waiting for a few more to come in there. Mike, any ones there you think? I don't know if I was to say which one do you think would come up top? Which one do you? Mike can't see the results. Only I can see these at this stage. I'm going to share them with everyone in a minute. What would you say would be the top or the top two?
So I think going back over time, the average handle time or first call resolution would be the likely candidates to come out on top, I would say.
Okay, well, let's see if you're right there, Mike. And we've got average handling time as the first metric. That actually does come out in an awful lot of polls. Number of calls very high. QA scores. First call resolution a bit lower than I would have expected on there. So that's some of the metrics that you use. What I'd now like to do is I'd like to share with everyone in the audience, or like you in the audience, to tell me what is the most important metric that you use to do your job. If you'd like to type those answers in on the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. So in the question box, if you can type in what is the single most important metric that you have to do your job. Maybe something that's not in that list before.
Indeed.
We've got some. So I'll just let you. We've got the answers starting to come through now. Sonia has said it's the customer effort score. It's quite interesting. Millie has said it's employee engagement. Pravin has said net promoter scores. Dana said executives think it's the average speed of answer. I think it's QA. So that's. I think I'd go with you on that one. On there. Peter has said, I find the best metric to use was the net promoter score, but have also used Solve before. Deborah said the number of non-value added calls, so the number of calls where the customer couldn't self-serve. And that's, I guess that's number of calls where the customer couldn't serve. I suppose, yeah, that's in a way is a bit like systems thinking, which is sort of the amount of failure demand, because if people could get the information themselves but couldn't, perhaps linked into the website. That's quite an interesting concept, Mike. I've not come across that one before. Quite a number of people are talking about QA parameters, a quality metric, new clients coming from recommendations. That's ultimately probably a net promoter score to an even greater degree.
I do.
Yes. Have you recommended rather than would you recommend? Yeah, and Sonia said the metric depends in the actual operations used. So quite a range of things there. So thanks everyone for sending those through. We'll come down to a few of those later in the call. We've got absolutely loads of them there. My next tip is use web chat to improve your online experience. Started to see a little bit in the last 12 months of a growth in web chat, And for people who seem to have deployed it, seems to be very, very useful, particularly useful for sales centers, where people are going through the the booking process, and perhaps they get stuck. At that point, if a little box pops up and says, "Hi, can I help you?" Often it could be as simple as they just can't get something into a box, or the choices you've given them don't make sense. Happened to me recently booking a holiday where I needed to put my children's date of birth in, and it was only for adults the form said. So I was able to have a web chat and finish the transaction, and they got the deal. It was very, very good indeed. And if anyone's using web chat, if they'd like to put some comments on that in the comments box, that would be great. My next tip is about listening to callers, which we do a great deal. But a lot of quality programs only listen to callers on the agent side. What people don't listen to is they don't listen to the IVR and the on-hold experience. And I've had some cases where I've listened to calls coming through, and you hear people just getting stuck in the IVR. I've heard in one case where someone was sort of swearing at the IVR. When they got through to the agent, they were as good as gold. And you'd have missed that whole experience. They were saying they've got 6 options. I've deleted the rude words in the IVR, and not one of them appropriate to me. And so absolute gold dust on that one.
But then very well
when they're connected. So you're not aware of that bit of the experience. And even things like listening to some of your music on hold can also be telling. And some of your messages, or one on Twitter, I think we retweeted recently, that message saying all of our agents are engaged at the moment. And someone said, "Congratulations to them now. Can you get on and answer my phone?" Cool. So yeah, listen to the IVR, and that could be a good one for a tune-up. And my final one of my 10 tips is, if people want self-service, these days they tend to use the web. If they pick up the phone, they actually want to speak to a person. And something that, if you read 2 weeks ago in the Sunday Times, I was quoted as rather nice as the law of Jonty, which is don't confuse the two. If you're going to provide self-service, do it over the web. Don't try and do it on the telephone. So, which I know can be quite controversial. I've got quite a lot of flack up about that, but quite a much larger amount of positive feedback on that sentiment. So that's my 10 contact center tips. Don't forget that we've got quite a number of tips sent in already, but if you've got any tips that's triggered, or any experience, put that into the box, and then we'll be going through those tips in a short while. What I'm delighted now to hand across to Mike Murphy. Mike last joined us about 6 months ago on a webinar, The Contact Center of the Future. And Mike is going to be sharing with us 10 contact center technology tips. So Mike, if you'd like to take us through your presentation, that would be great.
So hi everybody, it's nice to be back. This is my 3rd webinar with Jonty, which is terrific. So just for people who don't know me, I have regretfully more than 20 years of direct experience in the contact center. So prior to 2.5 years with Interactive Intelligence, I spent 16 years with Aspect, and before that I spent 8 years with Mitel. So during that tenure, the majority of my time, or certainly the last 20 years of my time, have been absolutely contact center focused. So that's really what has kind of been the foundation of some of the thoughts that I have here, which hopefully will be helpful to you going forward. So the tips that I wanted to kick off on really were like going hosted. And for me, really, this is a significant moving requirement in our customers' expectations at the moment. They are looking to simplify and make things easier for themselves, and if you like, giving the responsibility of complex technology to a hosted provider is a very good option. So you'll see at the bottom of the slide there, communications as a service, which really is, if you like, the communications world take on software as a service. It's basically the same thing. It's subscribing to functionality instead of buying and owning functionality. But the very last bullet point I showed there really is where I don't think this is actually a trend anymore. I think this is really happening. In 2009, 5% of our orders were hosted-based orders, versus last year you can see 25% of our orders. So it is a significant tranche of our business now and important for us going forward. And you can see by the growth that's been achieved over those number of years, the adoption is very, very brisk. However, going hosted should ensure that you still maintain total control. That's very, very important from your selection efforts are concerned. Make sure you still have control of the application. The benefits obviously are maximum flexibility, better reliability because it's all in protected and sort of safe data centers, reduced security risks. A nice little twist that Interactive has is where some customers choose to start in the cloud and sort of refresh their whole contact center operation, and then they may choose in time to literally lift and shift that onto a premise-based deployment should that work for them, depending upon their circumstances. So these kind of options, if you like, are very rich and available in the market. So good to investigate as far as your evaluations are concerned. The second one I have really as a tip is observations that I've made sort of over the years really, where I come across basically what I would say as reporting departments within the contact center. So if you had to build, or if you have a contact center reporting department or team, excuse me, I believe that's kind of a warning light really, because that's telling me that there are multiple platforms in that contact center. So it might be a national contact center, it might be a multi-site contact center, but the point is there are multiple machines, some maybe doing inbound, some doing outbound, some doing multi-channel. Ultimately, they will all have their own reporting tools, which is fine for that piece, but with regards to the overall picture, it might be kind of confusing. Certainly, they will all have their own separate databases, and again, the need for a reporting team is all about extracting the information from lots of databases and trying to make it into a single piece of management information that I can make decisions on. But often I used to experience things like conflicting definitions of a call. I mean, how simple is that? But really lots of time spent trying to assess that and measure that and getting it to make sure that we're not conflicting with other departments or other definitions. The challenge that I would say really is, the warning light is that ultimately what you're doing is undermining the sort of the accuracy of the reports. You're not really getting a real picture. It's probably going to be a foggy picture, if anything, and ultimately that could help you to make wrong decisions, which is no good thing. So really in today's world, the technology should be helping you with a very simple reporting engine, not a case of having to go away and create a whole department to do that. The third tip I have, or sort of tip number 13 in our sort of program today, really is about the customer experience. So Jonty described earlier how the customer experience may not necessarily be good in things like IVR and music on hold, that kind of thing. So we should re-listen to those to make sure it is actually a good experience. But my argument about that is customer experience should belong to the business owner. So who is the business owner? And in this scenario, I've kind of said, well, like who in your company owns customer service? So to me, that's the person who should own the experience that they want to give to their customer as far as customer service is concerned. So from that perspective, I believe that that person should be able to define and dictate to his sort of team members, what experiences the customer should have as they come through the technology. And again, in that team should be the tools, easy to use business tools that would allow that to be actually expressed and defined and launched. And from that perspective, think about, IT don't necessarily care about customers very much. They just have to look after you as sort of colleagues, as sort of like an internal client. You have to actually look after customer service or customer experience. So from that perspective, this can become passionately important. And so to actually execute well, you need to have the tools. So my sort of tip here really is get control of your customer experience, define it inside the business, and make sure that you're sort of checking it, validating it, refreshing it, responding to what your customers are telling you about improvements and changes. If we have to rely on third parties or internal departments or colleagues or change processes, you'll probably find that a bugbear is going to take a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or maybe a statement of work or some ridiculous cost to invoke these changes. We've got to kind of get away from that older way of thinking and get more smart and more immediate to responding to a glitch in our flows. And then the fourth tip that I have really is all about, Jonty mentioned about don't mix your sort of website self-service with the phone call, and really just kind of build on that, because often what I'm seeing is that IVRs are kind of getting a little bit too complex. We're trying to be too ambitious with what we're trying to achieve there. And sometimes if you're seeing things like costly proposals to either refresh or enhance your IVR applications, think twice, really think twice, because if you want to try and do too much on IVR and get maybe too elegant with your speech applications, not only is it going to be very expensive, but actually the customer experience could be highly compromised. What you could achieve with a sort of a modest website investment could probably achieve just as much instead of recreating it in IVR. So blend your website with your contact center, I would say, as a good tip. You'll find that your customers will find the website easier to use. These days, your knowledge management tools are accessible from the website, same knowledge tools that the agent would use, so there's no conflict between information that you would get on sort of automation versus the live agent, which absolutely is not the case when you go through an IVR, and I know that for sure, and I'm sure we've all had our own examples of that. So ultimately, for a better overall experience for your customers, that's kind of a good tip from my perspective. So I'm going to ask Jonty to just kick off a poll here in the context of customer feedback surveys.
Yes, thanks very much for that, Mike. So I'm just going to put a poll up. The poll is, how do you survey your customers? You have multiple choice answers here, so you can vote for more than one. The choices are a survey on the call. This is where the agent would ask the caller what their experience was at the, and get the answers back on the phone. A post-call IVR survey, which is effectively you ask the caller to stay online and put them through to an automated survey. Whether you use a follow-up email to send out to people, whether you send people a text message they can text back to, or whether you can whether you use a postal survey to put things to people in the post. If you've got something that doesn't fit into any of those boxes, just leave a comment on the question box on the right-hand side. Sharon says we haven't got a box in, but we call customers back at a later date, which is obviously customer callback was not one that I'd put in there. So I'm just going to close that and share the results with everyone. Looks like there's quite a disparate range of things coming through, and on-the-call survey seems the most likely. I guess the danger with that is that people, to some extent, might tell you what you want to hear. Quite a large number do a post-call IVR survey, follow-up email, and postal survey. So lucky for the post office, I guess with the increase in postal prices, I'm not sure where that's going to be quite as popular. So yeah, so quite a range there overall, and I'll just pass the baton back to Mike. Thank you.
But good results there. So thanks everybody for that.
Just page down.
Yep. We have a control issue here.
Okay, Rachel, could you put Mike's slides up on your machine?
Not sure why they stopped. Have I got control? Just bear with me.
Do you want to?
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
That's fine.
Here we go.
Great. Okay, so going on to my fifth tip, and that's really about customer satisfaction survey. And certainly, we saw quite a proportion there of IVR type surveys. Just a little thing to think about here really is, before selecting an agent, our sort of strategy would be to say, ask the customer to take part in the survey so that the agent has got no input or decision making with regards to saying, would you please take a survey for us, Mr. Customer? So in that sense, this is quite useful to sort of automate that function completely, offer the customer the invitation to take a survey in IVR, and then the actual survey takes place completely unaware from the agent. There is no sort of biased feedback. The agent doesn't know which call is being surveyed, one versus the other. But what I think is more powerful about these type of tools when they're sort of correctly deployed is the real-time and historical information that can be achieved from them. So here we have a sort of a simple executive, like a rev counter that you see in your car. It's kind of giving me a simple snapshot of the number of VIP customers who've completed my survey. I can run multiple surveys for different campaigns depending upon how I want to use it. And then I can also see the kind of scores I'm getting from the surveys, average scores, the average rank of the VIP. So to that end, real-time visibility of how I'm actually doing is always very helpful. And then along with that, as you would expect, the historical side is more for reflection on the strategy. Did it actually achieve what we want to achieve? Where should we make improvements? But again, this type of information needs to be abundant to kind of make sure that this sort of strategy works and works successfully for your customer.
And we've got a couple more comments in on how other people are surveying customers.
Good.
Quite a number of people do a callback at a later date or a little while later. Patrick says they use a customer satisfaction specialist company who do the calls out to people.
Yes.
And Asad has said they use recorded calls monitoring to survey customers. I guess
yes.
That's possibly listening to the tone of the customers, which also would be also something you could do within a post-call IVR service.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very good. Okay, so my next tip really is around the use of speech analytics, which we've heard quite a bit around in the marketplace recently. Some nice things about the approach here really is that it's real-time speech analytics. So as the conversation is taking place, the technology is doing its work. It's kind of listening to the calls. And then, depending upon what it hears, it's making real-time alerts to supervisors that could look something like this. So here we see an unfortunate call, really. The customer negative score is -11. And then you can see some of the phrases that have been used in the call, the number of times my money-back request has been made, the confrontational "you people" remark is always one to look out for, even to the point where, like, I'm just frustrated here. I want an escalation, put me through to a supervisor, I need some assistance. So in that sense, these kind of tools now are more available, they're more integrated. The triggers are kind of there to help supervisors be smarter on where they're actually doing quality monitoring, to help coach agents through to a better way of handling these situations. But also the prompts are there to help the agents too. So if I am seeing these kind of scores coming through, before we actually get to -11, you're sort of flagging the right kind of tools to an agent to help them try and recover the situation or marshal the situation or work for a better outcome for the customer. So the real effective use of speech analytics, not like a historical thing to sort of look back over quality scores or look back over what my customers are saying to me, but actually using the technology of speech analytics in real time and being able to react and respond and do something about dangerous situations like we see here. The next one really is all about home workers. So Jonty mentioned earlier about flexible shifts, and for me this is a really nice sort of dovetail into that sort of top tip, because home workers can nicely fill into a variety of shifts. We have a number of customers now who are, if you will, contact centers with only home workers as their agent groups, and there's some very interesting trends that we see from that, or sort of just behaviors really. It's because people are sort of home workers, they're actually not too put off by doing the uncomfortable shifts, like they found that there was an abundance of people available to do things like New Year's Eve, like Christmas Day, New Year's Day, where normally in the contact center they are the most difficult shifts to fill. With home workers, the organization VIP desk were kind of overflowed with people who were saying, "Oh, I'm quite happy to work those days," because they were home workers. So it's quite an interesting little twist to it. But my point here really is that a home worker can be not just a call handler, but also a multi-channel handler. So the technology today should be able to deliver through the same desktop tools, whatever channel that needs to be handled with at that moment in time: calls, chats, emails, social media, etc. So from that perspective, although the individual is physically remote, they can still be measured and managed in an identical way. The reporting is pure, so there's no compromise there just because I happen to sit in my home office. Quality management is still consistent, whether it's call and screen. If the agent feels a little bit disconnected, they have an assist button. These kind of tools make it very easy for the home worker to feel absolutely part of the organization, even though they're taking advantage of the flexible shifts. And then finally, it's not just a case where it has to be agents who are home workers. There's also the possibility with our kind of technology for the supervisor to be also a home worker. So the next tip the next poll that we have really is about the home workers. So Jonty, can you just take that for me?
Yeah, the question is, what are your plans for home working? Where are you on the home working journey? Have you already implemented home working? Is it part of the strategic plan? Are you planning to deploy in the next 12 months, or do you have no current plans? And certainly to your point about the the antisocial shifts.
Yes.
One of the great things with home workers, they're also quite happy to come in for or come online for that sort of often the one busy hour of the morning and the one busy hour of the afternoon.
Yep.
Because there's no travelling time. It's just putting it into the diary and doing that, and you carry on with life as normal. So just going to share the results here, and actually they're quite different to what we've seen on some of our home working webinars here, and I guess it reflects perhaps a self-selected audience on our home working ones. 10% of you have already implemented, and it'd be interesting if you could leave some feedback on how well you found it has been. 10% have got in strategic plan, 6% are going to deploy in the next 12 months. 74% of the audience have got no plans for home working at all.
That's surprising.
And that surprises me. That I suppose whenever we've asked this question before, has always been on the home working webinar, which is probably self-selecting that those are the people who are probably planning to do that. So I certainly think Mike's tip about looking at home working would be certainly a very valid tip. So we'll just hand the baton back to Mike, who will take us through his last couple of tips.
Right, thank you. Okay, so this is a very simple one really. It's the ability to take away the telephone from the desktop. Perhaps use a soft phone instead, where all of the functionality now really is in software. So I don't actually need the clumsy telephone on the desk next to the PC. Other examples really are where you have the thing next to the coffee cup really is like it is a telephone, but it's actually a dumb telephone because it's there to complement the software. So because all the features and tools, if you like, are in software, it just needs to be able to take a headset and allow an agent to take or make a call in the event that the PC is not available. So a very cost-effective, low-cost alternative to the telephone, much less training time, and then clearly more desk space, which is always quite useful in a busy contact center. The next tip I have really is about blending. So certainly, emails with phone calls, absolutely these days there should be no reason why agents aren't fed a variety of work. Certainly in the context of their utilization, it's very, very effective. It certainly is more rewarding for the agent to be sort of handling different types of channels. With knowledge bases that are available today, responses are pretty much fully prepared. Little tablets that sometimes technology has where agents can type in their own sort of personal response to sort of like chit chat being available too, means that there's no actual need for free-form text writing to respond to customer service emails, for example. And in that sense, the blending of not just emails but also chat, social media, SMS, absolutely would be for us like the norm these days, and encourage you really to sort of investigate that and utilize that, because really it's beneficial for your customer, it's also beneficial for your agent. And coming into my last tip, really, it's kind of I suppose the core tip around technology. So I would sort of argue very strongly about avoid anything that's sort of in-house, building it in-house, or custom built, or just for you as a sort of a special technology deployment. The reason really is that as we sort of bring in new innovations, like perhaps speech analytics, that doesn't always have to say that you've got to bring in new technology just for that particular role. What you sometimes find is over time, as you add things like IVR or add things like multi-channel or add things like QBuster and this type of thing, the collection of bits that sort of make up your contact center becomes very, very unwieldy to manage, very expensive. You're you're kind of locked into, I can't make an upgrade here because I've got a responsibility there. So, you know, time, ROIs, if you like, around these particular individual pieces can be sort of blurred or lost even because it's just hard to get the whole thing integrated together. So really, you know, difficult and costly to change. The objective of a complex deployment like this could often be more about the supplier trying to sort of keep you a customer forever than necessarily making sure you're giving a great experience to your customers going forward. So just be conscious of that, and something which I think is very prevalent in the market, but I would just encourage you to avoid. It's like a way, if you like, that you could avoid this would be to go out there and seek for software which is, if you like, ready-made and off the shelf. We've got to get away from these ideas of multiple platforms. Your single platforms are what contact centers are based on today. In software, you buy what you need with licensing. You're not messing around with multiple systems and multiple databases and those kind of complex things. Whether we talked about deploying it on-premise or whether we talked about hosting, well, we've touched on that already as a tip, really. The trend is for hosting, but absolutely, you know, premise makes sense for other customers. But the benefit of this approach really is easy administration. So, you know, like I mentioned before about the business having tools in the business to help them steer call flows and define call flows. These are the kind of platforms that will enable that for customers. And it's not just benefits for yourselves as operators, but also then for your customers and their experiences in those technologies. Things like reporting. You know, I mentioned before the army of people who are dedicated to doing call center reporting. You know, with the modern day platforms, there is a single database, and everything should be in there, from call recordings to workforce management to, you know, my performance statistics. So in that sense, it's becoming much more simplified, and therefore this takes the burden and costs away from you to help you just get on and do your job. If you like, effectively, it'll give you more hours in the day to be more effective. So really, just in sort of summary, from my perspective, you know, this kind of all-in-one approach will give you much more, you know, longer total cost of ownership, really. And that's kind of what I would argue is a final tip. Keep away from custom builds and go for off-the-shelf, ready-made software. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Jonty, and thank you for your time and for listening to me.
Thank you very much for that, Mike. That's been a certainly very comprehensive range of technology tips there. We're now at the part of the show where it's up to you, the audience, to send in your tips. This is a bit of an experiment for it. As they're coming in, Rachel is cutting and pasting them into an online presentation, so I can look at them. So we may have a few teething problems here. Just before I get into that, there's been quite a bit of discussion on home working. Millie has asked the question: if anyone in the audience who has already implemented home working, would they be open to, you know, sharing some of their best practices, or even a site visit? Millie works for a large insurance company, so if you would be happy to host a visit for that, that would be great. And Lars has asked, does anyone in the audience have any tips for incentivizing agents? So if there's any tips in the audience that you'd like to put in around that, that would be great.
Working is a good incentive.
Yeah.
For agents.
Yeah, so certainly there. Right, so my first tip, they're coming in thick and fast. I wondered whether we'd have 10 tips, but it looks like we're going to have much more than that. So we'll try and whistle through these. First one is sent in by Amy. Don't follow the script. Build rapport. Which I think is quite good. I encourage my staff to build rapport with callers rather than following a script. Instead of just simply entering details into the computer, we use the opportunity to make the call into a conversation, which I think certainly it's quite good to build rapport with people. I think would be very good. Our next tip has been sent in by Briga. I think that's or was it Briga? I'm not great on the. Apologies if I've got your name wrong. We're running a Simply Thank You scheme where colleagues can post a thank you for another colleague visible on an intranet page. I guess that's a bit like a wall board. We then have a random weekly draw for a £25 voucher. I think that's a nice little. I'm not sure if that's an incentive scheme, but that's certainly a very nice one. Very nice one there. If I can get technology sent in by Sharon. Customer satisfaction. Unhappy customers mean lost customers, and if we know why customers are unhappy, we know what to try and fix to deliver a better customer service and experience. So yeah, I guess this is all tied in to getting down to really what is the root cause of what's making making customers unhappy.
But I think the point you made, Jonty, about being able to listen and monitor the IVR part, like the automation or the self-service part of the call, along with the agent handling part of the call, is quite crucial, really, because a lot of the experience and the frustration, if you like, may come from there.
Yes, indeed. So the next, let's have a look at what the next step is. So I've got to get the is that going to come up?
You take the frame off the audience.
I would hope so.
Okay.
And can we move down? This may prove to be a. Let's. I'll just read them out from the box I've got on the screen. Peter Hardy has said I used a number of metrics displayed, but we've just started a new team and found problems. So is asking for advice on what would be the best metric for a business sales team. Certainly, if anyone in the audience has got any comments on that, it would be useful to see. Let's have a look what the next one is. Briga has said we resolve urgent IT problems for branch and contact centres, and what we try to do is to get to the first point to resolve to the first point of contact wherever possible is quite crucial. Let's have a look now as we go through.
I agree with that one. Repetitive songs on the IVR.
Okay, brilliant.
And our pet hate, really.
Yeah, I think it's very easy just to have one sound loop rather than a whole.
But I had a 2-month issue with my broadband service, and I spent a lot of time in the last 2 months speaking with Mumbai, normally out of hours and normally with patients. But one of the key things that frustrated me was to actually get to that live agent, albeit they were overseas. I had to go through a very repetitive IVR script, and I had to go through a very repetitive series of music offerings that I just had to sit through. So I can empathise with that fully.
Okay, if we could have the next one up on the board, Rachel. Another one by Peter. My top tip is to get buy-in. I found the best way to boost performance and improve morale is to get the advisor's buy-in on what you're trying to do. I think that's certainly very true. This could be done by involving the advisor in the process, so you can take their ideas on board and also makes them feel like their ideas are being included. I think that's absolutely cracking advice there, Peter. That's great. Rachel, can we have the next tip, please? From Gina, we make customer satisfaction calls for our customers. If it's overworked, the customer can get fed up with being contacted, asked if they're happy. So a good balance is important.
Got to be careful.
Certainly, my internet service provider, every time I contact them, sends me a survey, and I just ended up not filling them in. I know that one consultant, Peter Massey, always puts on the bottom of his surveys, I'd like to discuss this issue with you, and he never ever gets a call back. So his view is no one ever reads the verbatim comments. In which case, if you're not going to read them, why ask?
It's very important not to irritate the customer really looking for satisfaction.
Rachel, can we have the next one? Debaraj has said to maintain employee motivation and engagement at work, it's essential to channel staff's talents and enthusiasm in the right direction with other workplace initiatives, which makes staff feel valued and increases employee loyalty and therefore more happy customers. It seems to be getting a lot of tips about getting the employee engagement right. Absolutely critical. Rachel, what's the next one coming through? You can see that we're coming through thick and fast. Another one from Briga. Time to decide if we want to be call centres, contact centres, customer assistance centres, or what our agents, advisors, etc. are called. Certainly, that's quite interesting. I did a survey on that recently, saying should we be called call centres or contact centres, and certainly 2 years ago it was mainly call centre.
Right.
Now it does seem to be mainly contact centres. A lot of people just calling it customer services again.
Yes, indeed.
Yep. So going back, what, 10 years in our approach. Rachel, if we have the next one up, please. In the past, I've used a separate company to contact the customer after the call has been made to do the survey. I found this to be fair.
Very good, yes.
I guess if it's an independent company, that has the advantage of people could feel they could be more honest. Yeah, perhaps a bit more blunt than they perhaps would be with the.
And it just takes away that situation where perhaps an agent would not necessarily offer a bad call to have a survey versus a good call to have a survey. So just to get away from that.
Yeah, a number of comments coming through. People asking if we could have a copy of all the tips. We're going to certainly put that up on the website. I think we've been tweeting a number of them as Rachel's been tweeting them as we go on. I think we're keeping Rachel on her toes a bit here. Rachel, can we have the next one, please? You're doing a great job there. We've hired people who have had industry-specific experience. Their knowledge has been great, but they consistently fail QA. And we have some serious technical issues because some of them are not very tech-savvy and cannot troubleshoot their own setups. Okay. This is quite an interesting one. I've seen some companies, certainly in the insurance sector, where rather than employ insurance experts, they go out to the local hotels and try and find people, front of staff on the hotel, because they may not have the insurance experience, yes, but they've absolutely certainly got the customer experience. Yes, and it's one of those where you can, there's no old phrase, you can train for, hire for attitude, train for experience. And I think it goes the other way around. If anyone can remember that phrase, if they can type it through. Rachel, this next one coming through.
Very good. I like that one.
Home working. Make sure you hire tech-savvy people that can troubleshoot their own internet or computer issues if they've got an issue.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, it's a bit hard to call the IT help desk across to if you're out in Basildon.
But a lot of my IT help desk support is kind of remote these days too. So in that sense, they will text chat to me and they will actually take over my role, if you like. I can't remember what the phrase is, but they can basically become the user of my device. So in that sense, I understand the point that's made there, but I think less and less does it become an issue. I think, in my experience, I think it's a declining issue. I think the systems are getting a bit more reliable these days.
Right. Can we have the next one, please, Rachel? Don't incentivize good performance, but good improvement. Now that's quite interesting. That, in fact, Lars, if you could perhaps add in a little bit more detail onto that would be good to see. I certainly get your sentiment that improvement is really quite key, but I'd worry a bit about not incentivizing good performance, because I suppose the danger is the top performers, particularly in a sales center, the top performers always get the top rewards, whereas you want some way of showing someone's improved, but then I don't know, Lars, if you've got some more detail on how you've done that, I think if you could type that in, we'd love to see that. Rachel, I think if you have the next one in, there's a couple more in the queue if we can start to put them through. Peter says don't use scripts. We've got a number of Peters, so it's not all the same there. Don't use scripts. However, use a checklist the agent can use to refer to during the call. That way, the call sounds less robotic. That's brilliant. That's certainly a good one. A checklist.
Or bullet points, even just the bullet points.
Yeah, because certainly some of those. YouTube is renowned for the scripted conversations from contact centres there, which can be quite challenging. Right, we've got a few more tips which I'll go through, and I'm not sure we've got all of these typed in quite yet, but we will hopefully. Lawrence has said, a tip: encourage your sales agents to love their customers. Love's in capitals here. Listen to the customer, hear what they have to say, keep the customers on side with you, and this will help when you close. So effectively, keep your customers valued and educate them, leaving the need to approach the contact center non-existent. So, I mean, certainly love your customers is a
Good place to start.
A good place to start. Obviously, don't try to love them too much. I think could be dangerous. But yeah, that's a great comment there. Sorry we haven't been able to get all these up on the screen. I'll quickly run through a few more. So we've just got loads. What we'll do is we'll collate this together and put this on afterwards. A tip from Kevin: more focus on best contact resolution. It isn't always possible to resolve on the first contact. Advisors are encouraged to take ownership of the issue and resolve at the earliest opportunity, which may mean calling back and making later contacts to the customer. Alleluia is what I'd say to that one, Kevin. If only more contact centres would do that, we would by no means have some of the reputation that we read about. That is an absolute cracking tip, and I think that one actually I would say would be my choice for the bottle of champagne. So we'll certainly
Congratulations, Kevin.
Congratulations, Kevin, on that one. I'm going to take two more before we sign off. We've got one from Donna. Fully engage your staff in technology enhancements and process improvements. I guess, Mike, this is something you'd probably be very keen on. As they are on the front lines, they can provide the best insight for positive changes. This can increase the overall morale as it fixes the issues they encounter, and it was their ideas that made the changes.
Right, and that's the point I was trying to make, really, about getting the business to own the definition of customer experience. That's exactly what I mean by that. So it's the people who are in the contact center, you're touching the customers every day. They have the real sort of feedback of what it's like to, for the customer to communicate. So let that input be absolutely part of how that customer experience is defined and launched.
And I've got one final tip from Dima, and apologies to all the people who've not been able to get to so far. Get other areas of the business to listen in to contact center calls to appreciate what goes into the day-to-day's running. If you can bust people in from other departments, my goodness, you'd get a lot of those broken processes, awful lot of those broken processes fixed. I've even seen cases where you need to take out sensitive information of giving CDs or MP3s to senior managers so they can play it in their car on the way home. That can also be very effective. So thanks everyone for all of those tips that came through.